Picture this. You're walking alone down a dimly lit street at night. Your footsteps echo against the silence. Suddenly, you hear another set of footsteps behind you. Your heart starts racing. Your muscles tense. Every shadow becomes a potential threat. Your ancient brain screams one word: run. But here's what's remarkable. Those footsteps might belong to someone heading home from work. Just like you, that shadow might be nothing more than a tree swaying in the wind. Yet your body is already flooded with adrenaline, preparing you for a battle that exists only in your mind. Fear. It's the most primal emotion we possess, older than language, older than civilization, older than our capacity for reason itself. It's written into our DNA, carved into our neural pathways by millions of years of evolution. And in our modern world, it's running wild, creating shadows where none exist, turning molehills into mountains, transforming possibilities into paralyzing terror. We fear rejection, so we never speak our truth. We fear failure, so we never try. We fear the unknown, so we cling to the familiar, even when it no longer serves us. We fear death, so we forget to live. We fear not being enough, so we shrink ourselves to fit into boxes that were never meant for us. But what if I told you that fear, the seemingly unconquerable force, is nothing more than an ancient alarm system that's desperately trying to protect a version of you that no longer needs protecting? What if the very mechanism designed to keep you alive is actually keeping you from truly living? Tonight, we're going to journey into the deepest caves of human consciousness, where fear lurks in the shadows of our minds. We'll explore the neuroscience of terror, the psychology of anxiety, and the cosmic irony that the same star-forged atoms that make up your brain are capable of creating monsters that exist nowhere but in your thoughts. This isn't just about understanding fear. It's about understanding yourself. Because when you truly comprehend the science behind why you run from shadows, you'll discover something extraordinary. Those shadows have no power over you whatsoever. The only chains that bind you are the ones you forged in the darkness of your own mind. Let me tell you about Sarah. She's brilliant, graduated top of her class, has revolutionary ideas that could change her industry, possesses a mind sharp enough to cut through the toughest problems. But Sarah has never shared her ideas in a meeting. She's never applied for that promotion she deserves. She's never started the company she dreams about every night before falling asleep. Why? Because somewhere deep in her neural networks, in pathways carved by millions of years of evolution, lurks a fear so fundamental that it masquerades as wisdom. What if they reject me? What if I fail? What if I'm not good enough? Sarah's story is your story. It's my story. It's the human story. We live in an age of unprecedented opportunity. Yet we're paralyzed by fears that made sense when our ancestors faced saber-toothed tigers, but make no sense in a world where the greatest dangers we face are the risks we don't take. We carry within us the genetic memory of prey animals, always scanning the horizon for predators, always ready to freeze, fight, or flee. Consider Marcus, who lies awake at 3 a.m., his mind racing through catastrophic scenarios that will likely never happen. His mortgage payment is due, his relationship feels strained, his career seems stagnant. His amygdala, that ancient alarm bell buried deep in his brain, treats each worry as if it were a life-or-death emergency. His body floods with stress hormones designed to help him outrun a predator. But there's nothing to run from except the thoughts in his own head. Or think about Elena, who stands at the edge of a new relationship, her heart open, but her mind closed. She's been hurt before, and her brain has learned to associate vulnerability with pain. Every time she considers letting someone close, her neural networks fire in patterns that say danger, danger, retreat. She mistakes this biological alarm for intuition, not recognizing that it's just the echo of ancient wounds reverberating through her consciousness. This is the paradox of modern fear. We're equipped with a nervous system designed for a world that no longer exists trying to navigate challenges our ancestors never faced with tools that are often completely inappropriate for the task at hand. Your fear of public speaking triggers the same physiological response that once helped your ancestors escape from predators. Your anxiety about social rejection activates ancient circuits that once meant the difference between life and death, when being cast out from the tribe meant facing the wilderness alone. Your terror of failure connects to primitive survival instincts that once warned against taking risks that could result in starvation or death. But here's the cruel irony. In our modern world, the greatest risk isn't taking chances. It's not taking them at all. The cave that feels safest often becomes a prison that keeps us from reaching our potential. The shadows we run from are usually projections of our own making, fears without substance, monsters without form. We become a species that are afraid of its own shadow, literally and metaphorically. We fear our own power because we've been taught that playing small is safer than playing big. We fear our own light because we've been conditioned to believe that dimming ourselves makes others more comfortable. We fear our own potential because we've learned that mediocrity is less threatening than excellence. And so we run. We run from opportunities. We run from connections. We run from the very experiences that would teach us that we're far more resilient, far more capable, and far more powerful than our fears would have us believe. But what if running from our shadows is exactly the wrong response? What if the very act of fleeing from our fears give them power they don't inherently possess? What if understanding the science behind our terrors could set us free from their grip? To understand fear, we must first understand the most complex object in the known universe, your brain. This 3-pound universe inside your skull contains approximately 86 billion neurons, more than there are stars in the Milky Way galaxy. Each neuron can connect to thousands of others, creating a network of connections so vast that if you try to count them one by one, it would take you millions of years. And somewhere in this cosmic web of consciousness lies the architect of your fears, the amygdala. The amygdala is ancient. Evolutionarily speaking, it's one of the oldest parts of your brain. It sits deep in your limbic system, buried beneath layers of more recently evolved neural tissue, like an ancient castle surrounded by a modern city. This almond-shaped cluster of neurons has one primary job: to keep you alive by detecting threats and initiating your body's alarm response. Here's where it gets fascinating. Your amygdala doesn't think. It reacts. It processes sensory information faster than your conscious mind can comprehend it, making split-second decisions about whether something is safe or dangerous based on pattern recognition and emotional memory. It can detect a potential threat and flood your body with adrenaline before you're even consciously aware that anything is wrong. This was incredibly useful when our ancestors lived in environments filled with immediate physical dangers. If you heard a rustling in the bushes, your amygdala would instantly prepare your body to fight or flee, potentially saving your life. It was better to react to 100 false alarms than to miss one real predator. But here's the problem. Your amygdala can't tell the difference between a saber-toothed tiger and a job interview. It can't distinguish between a physical threat and an emotional one. It responds to the fear of social rejection with the same intensity it would respond to mortal danger. To your amygdala, being laughed at by your peers triggers the same alarm bells as being stalked by a predator. Dr. Joseph LeDoux, a neuroscientist at NYU, discovered something remarkable. The amygdala receives sensor information through two pathways, the high road and the low road. The low road is fast but crude, bypassing your conscious awareness entirely. This is why you can jump at a shadow before you realize it's just a shadow. The high road is slower but more accurate, routing through your prefrontal cortex where rational thought occurs. The problem is that fear always takes the low road first. By the time your rational mind kicks and say, wait, that's not actually dangerous, your body is already flooded with stress hormones, your heart is racing, and your ancient brain is screaming, threat, threat. Threat. This explains why fear feels so real, so immediate, so overwhelming. Because to your nervous system, it is real. Your body doesn't distinguish between actual danger and imagined danger. The physiological response is identical, whether you're facing a hungry lion or giving a presentation to your colleagues. But here's where the science gets even more interesting: neuroplasticity. Your brain is not fixed. It's constantly rewiring itself based on your experiences and thoughts. Every time you avoid something you fear, you strengthen the neural pathways associated with that fear. Your brain literally learns that the feared situation is dangerous, even when it's not. This is why avoidance doesn't cure fear, it feeds it. When you avoid public speaking, your brain interprets this as confirmation that public speaking is indeed dangerous. When you don't apply for that job because you fear rejection, your neural networks become more convinced that rejection is a threat to be avoided at all costs. Dr. Lisa Feldman Barrett's groundbreaking research on emotion construction reveals something even more profound. Emotions, including fear, are not hardwired responses but constructed experiences. Your brain is constantly making predictions about what's going to happen next, based on past experiences and current sensory input. Fear isn't something that happens to you. It's something your brain creates by predicting danger based on incomplete information. This means that fear is not a fact about the world. It's a story your brain tells you about the world. And like all stories, it can be edited, revised, and rewritten. The neuroscience reveals something extraordinary. The same brain that creates your fears also has the power to dissolve them. The prefrontal cortex, the most recently evolved part of your brain, can literally override the amygdala's alarm signals when you understand what's happening and why. Studies using functional MRI scans show that when people learn to recognize and name their fears, activity in the amygdala decreases, while activity in the prefrontal cortex increases. Simply understanding that what you're experiencing is fear, not danger, begins to calm the ancient alarm system. But perhaps most remarkably, research has shown that the same neural networks that process physical pain also process social and emotional pain. This isn't metaphorical. Social rejection literally hurts, activating the same brain regions as a physical injury. This is why emotional wounds can feel so devastating and take so long to heal. Understanding this science doesn't minimize your fears. It explains them. It shows you that you're not broken, you're not weak, you're not flawed. You're a human being equipped with an ancient survival system that's doing its best to protect you in a world it was never designed to understand. Your fear isn't your enemy. It's a confused friend, an old protective guardian that needs to be gently educated about the difference between actual danger and perceived threat. 1. Fear is a time traveler. Imagine if you discovered that 90% of your fears are actually visitors from the past, ghosts of ancient experiences that have no relevance to your present reality. This isn't poetic license. This is neuroscientific fact. Dr. Bessel van der Kolk's research reveals that traumatic memories are stored differently than normal memories. They're not filed away in your brain's library like regular experiences. Instead, they remain active in your limbic system, ready to be triggered by any similarity to the original event. Your brain doesn't timestamp these memories. To your nervous system, a fear formed in childhood feels just as current and relevant as something that happened yesterday. This is why a harsh word from a boss can transport you instantly back to being a criticized child. Why the fear of abandonment can be triggered by a late text message from a friend. Why the anticipation of rejection can flood you with the same terror you felt when you were excluded on a playground decades ago. Your fears are time travelers, carrying messages from a past that no longer exists about dangers that are no longer real. That voice in your head saying, "You're not good enough," isn't speaking about who you are today. It's echoing the worried concerns of a child who is trying to make sense of a confusing world with a still developing brain. Consider the story of Dr. Maya Angelou, one of the most powerful voices in literature. As a child, she was so traumatized by abuse that she stopped speaking for nearly 5 years. Her brain, in its wisdom, concluded that words were dangerous, that speaking up led to pain. Yet she didn't let this ancient fear define her future. She recognized it as a visitor from her past and chose to send it a different message. She became one of the most eloquent speakers of her generation, proving that our past fears don't have to become our future limitations. The science shows us that these temporal distortions happen because your brain's primary job isn't accuracy, it's survival. Your amygdala would rather make 1,000 mistakes than miss one real threat. It stamps every intense emotional experience with the label important. Remember this, without regard for whether the lesson is still relevant. But here's the liberating truth. Once you understand that most of your fears are outdated software running on current hardware, you can begin to upgrade your system. You can thank your younger self for trying to protect you, then gently explain that you're no longer in that old situation, and you've developed new capabilities since then. 2. Fear is a hologram. Here's something that will shift your entire relationship with fear. Most of what you're afraid of doesn't actually exist, not in the way you think it does. Fear is a hologram, a three-dimensional projection created by your brain from two-dimensional shadows. Dr. Daniel Siegel's research into the neuroscience of emotion reveals that fear is primarily a predictive emotion. Your brain takes incomplete sensory data, compares it to past experiences, and then projects a future scenario. But here's the crucial part. That future scenario is not reality. It's your brain's best guess about what might happen, based on limited information and outdated programming. Think about this. When you fear rejection, what exactly are you afraid of? The word no? The feeling of disappointment? The story you'll tell yourself about what that no means about your worth as a person? None of these things exist in the present moment. They're all projections, holograms created by your imagination. Quantum physics tells us something profound about the nature of reality. The act of observation changes what's being observed. The same principle applies to fear. The very act of deeply observing your fears, not fighting them, not fleeing from them, but truly examining them, changes their nature. When you shine the light of conscious awareness onto your fears, something remarkable happens. They begin to lose their solidity. That overwhelming terror of failure, when examined closely, it's often not about failure at all, but about the meaning you've attached to failure. That paralyzing fear of rejection, it's not about the other person's response, but about your story of what the response says about your value. This is why meditation and mindfulness practices are so effective at reducing anxiety. They train you to observe your thoughts and emotions without immediately believing them or reacting to them. You begin to see fear for what it really is, a mental construction, not a physical reality. Consider the story of Susan Jeffers, author of Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. She discovered that her fear of change was actually a fear of a story she was telling herself about change, that it would lead to loss, that she couldn't handle uncertainty, that safety lay only in the familiar. When she examined these beliefs closely, she realized they were assumptions, not facts. The fear wasn't about change itself. It was about her predictions about change. The holographic nature of fear also explains why it can feel so overwhelming. Holograms appear three-dimensional even though they're created from flat surfaces. Your brain creates a vivid, multisensory experience of danger from thoughts and memories that have no physical substance. This is why fear can feel so much more intense than the actual events we're afraid of when they occur. 3. Fear is your creativity in disguise. Here's the most counterintuitive insight of all. Fear is actually a sign of your creative power, not your weakness. Every fear you experience is proof that you have an imagination capable of creating entire alternate realities. The same mental faculty that generates your deepest terrors is the same one capable of envisioning your greatest possibilities. Dr. Breen Brown's research on creativity and vulnerability reveals that the areas of the brain responsible for imagination are the same ones that generate anxiety. This isn't coincidence. It's design. Your ability to imagine future scenarios, to run mental simulations, to project yourself into different possibilities is one of humanity's greatest evolutionary advantages. It's also what makes us uniquely capable of being afraid of things that don't exist. Think about it. No other species can be paralyzed by the fear of a future social interaction or lose sleep over a presentation that's weeks away. This isn't a bug in human consciousness. It's a feature. It's evidence of your sophisticated ability to mental time travel, to simulate different outcomes, to prepare for possibilities that may never occur. The same brain that can keep you awake at night worrying about worst-case scenarios is the same brain that can envision solutions to problems that haven't been solved, create art that has never been created, and imagine realities that have never existed. Consider how authors create terrifying scenarios in horror novels, or how filmmakers craft scenes that make audiences jump out of their seats. They're using the same imaginative faculty that creates your personal fears, but channeling it into creative expression rather than personal paralysis. Every entrepreneur who ever built a successful business had to overcome the fear of failure, but they couldn't have built anything without first being able to imagine a different reality. Every artist who ever created something meaningful had to face the fear of criticism, but they couldn't create without the same imaginative power that generates that fear. This reframes fear entirely. Instead of seeing it as evidence of your limitations, you can recognize it as proof of your creative potential. The more vivid your fears, the more powerful your imagination, the more detailed your worst-case scenarios, the more capable you are of envisioning best-case possibilities. The neuroscience supports this. Brain scans show that people with higher levels of creativity also tend to have more active amygdalas. They're more sensitive to potential threats, but they're also more capable of generating novel solutions. Their sensitivity isn't a weakness. It's the price they pay for having access to a richer imaginative landscape. This insight transforms your relationship with fear from resistance to curiosity. Instead of asking, how do I get rid of this fear? You can ask, what is my imagination trying to show me? What creative possibilities am I not considering? How can I redirect this creative energy toward what I want to create rather than what I want to avoid? Now that we understand the science behind our shadows, let's explore practical ways to transform your relationship with fear from one of avoidance to one of alliance. These aren't techniques to eliminate fear. That would be like trying to eliminate your immune system. Instead, these are ways to educate your ancient alarm system about modern realities. Practice 1, the fear inventory. Begin by creating a comprehensive map of your fear landscape. Take out a journal and divide a page into 3 columns: surface fear, deeper fear, and ancient echo. In the surface fear column, write down what you think you're afraid of. I'm afraid of public speaking, or I'm afraid of starting my own business. In the deeper fear column, dig beneath the surface. I'm afraid people will judge me, or I'm afraid I'll fail and prove I'm not capable. In the ancient echo column, trace the fear back to its origins. I'm afraid of being rejected by the tribe, or I'm afraid I won't survive on my own. This practice illuminates the time-traveling nature of your fears. You'll often discover that you're not actually afraid of the thing you thought you were afraid of. You're afraid of an ancient story that your brain is projecting onto a modern situation. Dr. Tim Ferriss's fear-setting exercise takes this further. Instead of just identifying fears, he recommends defining them in detail, exploring what would happen if your worst fears came true, and then developing plans to recover from those scenarios. Often, you'll discover that even your worst-case scenarios are survivable and, in many cases, recoverable. Practice 2, the amygdala dialogue. Remember, your amygdala is like an overprotective friend who means well but doesn't understand modern life. Instead of fighting with this part of yourself, try having a conversation with it. When you notice fear arising, pause and speak to your amygdala directly. Thank you for trying to protect me. I understand your concern about my safety. Let me share some information with you about this situation that you might not have considered. Then, engage your prefrontal cortex by asking rational questions. What evidence do I have that the situation is actually dangerous? What would I tell a friend who was facing the same fear? What's the most likely outcome based on facts rather than projections? Neuroscientist Dr. Daniel Siegel calls this name it to tame it. Research shows that simply labeling an emotion reduces activity in the amygdala by up to 50%. When you say, I notice I'm feeling afraid right now, you're activating your prefrontal cortex and calming your alarm system. Practice 3, the exposure ladder. Since avoidance strengthens fear, exposure weakens it. But jumping into the deep end rarely works. It often just reinforces the brain's assessment that the situation is indeed dangerous. Instead, create an exposure ladder. If you fear public speaking, your ladder might look like this. Step 1. Record yourself speaking alone. Step 2. Share a voice note with a trusted friend. Step 3. Speak up once in a small group discussion. Step 4. Give a toast at a small gathering. Step 5. Present to a small work team. Step 6. Speak at a larger event. Each successful exposure sends a message to your amygdala. See? This wasn't dangerous after all. Your brain literally rewires itself based on these experiences, weakening the neural pathways associated with the fear and strengthening pathways associated with confidence and capability. Practice 4. The creativity redirect. Since fear is creativity in disguise, learn to redirect that creative energy. When you notice yourself creating elaborate worst-case scenarios, interrupt the pattern by asking, what if I use the same creative energy to imagine the best-case scenario? If you're afraid of applying for a job because you're vividly imagining all the ways you could fail, force yourself to spend equal time vividly imagining all the ways you could succeed. Your brain doesn't distinguish between imagined and real experiences. Mental rehearsal positive outcomes is just as neurologically powerful as mental rehearsal of negative ones. Practice 5. The physical reset. Since fear is a full-body experience, you need full-body solutions. Your nervous system responds to physical cues faster than mental ones. The physiological sigh, a double inhale followed by a long exhale, activates your parasympathetic nervous system and calms your amygdala within seconds. Cold water on your face triggers the dive response, immediately slowing your heart rate. Progressive muscle relaxation teaches your body the difference between tension and relaxation. Remember, you're not trying to eliminate the physical sensations of fear. You're trying to change your relationship with them. Instead of interpreting a racing heart as evidence of danger, you can reinterpret it as evidence that your body is preparing you for something important. Practice 6. The meaning reframe. Often, our fears lose their power when we place them in a larger context. Ask yourself, if I knew I had only 1 year to live, would this fear matter? If I were 90 years old looking back on my life, what would I regret more, taking this risk or avoiding it? Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist, discovered that people can endure almost any suffering if they can find meaning in it. The same principle applies to fear. You can face almost any fear if you connect it to something meaningful. Instead of asking, what if I fail, ask, what becomes possible if I succeed? What dreams stay dead if I don't act? Who else benefits if I overcome this fear? We began this journey in the shadows, examining why we run from threats that exist only in the landscape of our imagination. We've traveled to the neural pathways of fear, explored the ancient alarm systems that govern our responses, and discovered that the monsters we flee from are often nothing more than outdated software running on sophisticated hardware. But this understanding leads to a profound realization. If fear is constructed, it can be deconstructed. If it's learned, it can be unlearned. If it's a story your brain tells you about reality, then you have the power to edit that story. The science reveals something extraordinary about human consciousness. We are the only species capable of observing our own thoughts, questioning our own fears, and choosing different responses to ancient programming. This isn't just a psychological insight. It's a statement about the nature of consciousness itself. You are not your fears. You are the awareness that observes your fears. You are not your thoughts. You are the consciousness that witnesses your thoughts. This isn't New Age philosophy. This is what neuroscience tells us about the structure of human experience. When you truly understand that fear is a construction of your mind, not a proper reality, everything changes. You realize that the prison you thought you were trapped in was actually a room with an unlocked door. The chains you thought bound you were actually made of ideas, not iron. The shadows you were running from were actually cast by a light within you. This doesn't mean fear becomes irrelevant or that courage means the absence of fear. True courage is not the lack of fear. It's a recognition that fear is information, not instruction. It's data from your nervous system, not commands for your behavior. Think of fear as a smoke detector. When it goes off, it's giving you information about a potential threat. But just as you wouldn't evacuate your house every time you burn toast, you don't need to rearrange your entire life every time your internal alarm system activates. You investigate, assess the actual level of danger, and then decide how to respond based on current reality rather than ancient programming. This perspective transforms fear from an enemy to be defeated into a teacher to be understood. Your fears become a map of your growth edges, pointing toward the territories of your unexplored potential. Every fear you face and move through expands your comfort zone and increases your capacity for life. The ultimate resolution isn't the elimination of fear. It's the development of a different relationship with it. It's the recognition that you are larger than your fears, more resilient than your anxieties, and more powerful than the stories your mind tells you about your limitations. You are a conscious being inhabiting a universe of infinite possibilities, temporarily believing that you are limited by the projections of an ancient alarm system that's trying to protect a version of you that no longer needs that protection. You are stardust that has become aware of itself, cosmic dust that has developed the capacity for self-reflection and choice. Your fears are not your destiny. They are invitations to discover who you become when you stop running from shadows and start walking toward a light of your own potential. Here we stand at the threshold between understanding and transformation, between insight and action. You now know the science behind your shadows, but knowledge without application remains merely intellectual entertainment. The question is, what will you do with this understanding? I want you to imagine yourself 1 year from today. In one version of your future, you allowed fear to continue making your decisions. You stayed in the same comfortable prison, avoided the same risks, and let the same old stories dictate your choices. How does that feel? What opportunities have you missed? What dreams have you left unexplored? Now imagine a different version of that future. One where you've used this understanding to rewrite your relationship with fear, where you've recognized your fears as outdated software and upgraded your system, where you've moved through your growth edges instead of around them. What has become possible? Who have you become? What impact have you made? The choice between these two futures begins with a single decision. Will you treat this knowledge as interesting information or as a call to action? Your assignment, should you choose to accept it, is this: identify one fear that has been holding you back, something specific that you've been avoiding, because your ancient alarm system has labeled it as dangerous. Using everything you've learned today, create an action plan to move through that fear within the next 30 days. Start with your fear inventory. Identify the surface fear, the deeper fear, and the ancient echo. Then create your exposure ladder, small, manageable steps that will teach your nervous system that this situation isn't actually dangerous. But here's what I really want you to understand. This isn't just about overcoming one particular fear. This is about proving to yourself that you have the power to rewrite the stories that govern your life. Every fear you move through makes you more skillful at moving through the next one. Every shadow you illuminate makes it easier to see that other shadows are equally insubstantial. Share your journey with others. Comment below and tell us, what's one fear you're ready to face? What's one shadow you're tired of running from? Your vulnerability gives others permission to be vulnerable. Your courage inspires others to be courageous. Remember, you're not trying to become fearless. You're trying to become fear-friendly. You're not trying to eliminate your alarm system. You're trying to educate it. You're not trying to destroy your shadows. You're trying to understand that they have no substance beyond what you give them. The universe spent 13.8 billion years creating conditions for your existence. Stars had to be born and die to create the elements in your body. Countless generations had to survive and reproduce to give you life. You are the result of an unbroken chain of success stories stretching back to the beginning of time itself. You did not come this far to only come this far. You did not inherit the creative power of the cosmos to spend your days running from shadows. You are here to discover what becomes possible when a conscious being stops believing in the limitations projected by an ancient alarm system and starts acting from the truth of their infinite potential. Your fears are not your enemies. They are the guardians of your growth edges. The very things you're afraid of losing by taking risks are often the same things you'll lose by not taking them. Your sense of aliveness, your connection to your potential, your experience of being fully human. So step into the light of your own understanding. Use this knowledge not just to comprehend your fears, but to transform your relationship with them. Show the universe and yourself what becomes possible when fear becomes fuel instead of paralysis, when anxiety becomes information instead of instruction, when shadows become invitations instead of obstacles. The science has shown you the way. Your courage will light the path. Your action will create the future, where fear serves life instead of limiting it. The question is not whether you're capable of this transformation. You are. The question is whether you're willing to discover just how capable you truly are. What shadow will you illuminate first?